Usually Amplify is for the development and the DevOps professional certifications, right? But solution architect is a broad, I would say, a broad field, and anything can happen in the solution architect associate, and even more in the solution architect professional, right? Okay, good. So the plan for today, we're gonna have a demo. A demo is what we have today, right? Yeah. Last Friday we have a presentation. Today we're gonna have a demo. Well, last Friday was kind of a presentation demo that Pat conducted. So we're gonna have a real demo today. So let me show you what the output of the final result is gonna be. So it's gonna be this, what you see here, right? It's gonna be, if you take a look at that, it's just balancing the data. You see you see the changes here, right? How it changes the IP address and the instance ID, right? And the plan for today is the first thing that we're gonna do, we're gonna build a load balancer. So we're gonna create a load balancer, right? And commonly known as ALB, right? And an elastic load balancer. Then we're gonna create a target group, right? It's gonna be the second thing that we're gonna do, right? After that, we're going to create, just to give it time, maybe we already have the load balancer. We're gonna go ahead and create a CloudFront distribution, right? And that's gonna give us some time, okay? So I may walk you through the process, but I already have that solution, so I may not finish it, right? Just tell you how it's built, right? After we build the CloudFront distribution, we're gonna go ahead and create an auto-scaling group, right? Auto-scaling group, right? So that we can spin up new instances and also kind of terminate them if they are declared unhealthy, right? And of course, this target group, I'm sorry, I forgot something here. So here we're gonna create, after this, we're gonna create our launch template, right? That's gonna be used by the auto-scaling group to launch identical instances. And this is gonna have user data, because it's gonna be a web server that is gonna install an Apache server, and then it's gonna have some text, what you see here in the screen, using the metadata of the instances to grab this information from each instance, which is different, right? So it's gonna be that. Then we're going to create a hosting zone in Route 53, right? And we're gonna create an alias record that's gonna help us point to the CloudFront distribution with a custom domain, right? But before we do that, we're going to create or request a public certificate, right? Certificate in AWS Certificate Manager, right? And that's going to be used by the CloudFront distribution, right? So we're going to come back here and add that certificate, right? With an alternate name, CNAME, right? That's going to help us use something like this, right? Like this here, right? This subdomain here, instead of this is the domain, and this is the subdomain. So the record in Route 53 is going to help us with that, right? And finally, we're going to create a WAF ACL, right? That we're going to attach to the CloudFront distribution, so that we can gonna block requests coming from the United States, for example, right? Just to avoid any requests coming from that specific country. Okay, so that's the things that we're gonna do. As I have the solution, I may not finish everything, right? But just to walk you through the process, right? So let's start. If you have any questions, just don't hesitate to interrupt me, right? And ask me. So these are the servers that are already built with created with the auto-scaling group. So the first thing that we're gonna do is just come here and create the last load balancer, right? So here in the EC2 dashboard, right here, when you look for EC2 in the search bar, you click here EC2, you're gonna come down here where it says load balancers, right? And what we're gonna do, I already have one, as you can see here. I'm gonna create an application load balancer. So we're gonna work in that layer 7 for the application, right? And I'm gonna name it AB or maybe demo for the SA program, elastic load balancer, just to have a different name from the other one, right? So that's gonna be an internet facing because it's gonna be working there in the front end, right? It's gonna be IPv4. We're not using IPv6 at this time, right? And we're gonna use the default VPC. We don't have any other VPC at this time. And as we have gonna have 6 different okay, there's someone that has okay. As we're gonna have 6 instances at all times, we're gonna select 3 different availability zones so we can balance the traffic, like 2 instances per zone, right? Good. So we have that. We don't have a security group for that, but I already have one that I created. So that's going to be the ALB SAA demo security group. This one has port 80 open for HTTP and also port 22 for SSH, just in case I need to SSH into these instances, just if I need to, right? Now this is going to have a listener, right? And the listener is going to be listening on port 80, which is HTTP. And I already have a target group that is already used by the other load balancer. So I'm going to go ahead and create a target group, right? So we are in the process of creating these 2 guys. I'm going to cross them out when they're done, right? Now, this target group, which is basically the instances that we're going to be working with, they are going to be listening in port 80 as well. So I'm going to call it demo SAA target group 2, right? And they're going to be listening on this port 80. It's going to be the same VPC as the load balancer. It's going to be using the protocol version HTTP 1 or 2, whichever you want to use. And the health protocol is going to be HTTP. If you're using HTTPS for port 443, you can do it as well. But in this case, we're going to use HTTP. And of course, it's going to be finding this path because I'm going to be creating a file, HTML file that contains this code here, right? So that is been looking for HTML, right? HTML is going to be looking for this specific path when it does the health checks, right? Now you can do some of the settings here, advanced settings, maybe the number of consecutive health checks successes required, number 5, to declare the instance either unhealthy or healthy. So I can reduce it to 3 if I want to finish earlier, but the shorter it is, the possibilities of not having a healthy check, it's the higher, right? So this is the number of consecutive health check failures. So after 2 failures, then you consider a target unhealthy. And this is a timeout. The amount of time in seconds during which no response means a failed health check. If 5 seconds have passed and there's no response, so it's a failed check, right? And this is interval. This is between health checks, 30 seconds. Maybe I can say 10, right? Seconds here. And this is the return status code of 200. It says, okay, everything is fine when it returns to 100. So it's going to be the first page. And then I can go ahead and register these instances. I don't have to because I'm supposed to not have these instances yet, right? So what I'm going to do is just move on and create the target group, right? So now I'll have the target group number 2, and I can come back to the load balancer and simply refresh here. and I get that target group here. Okay, so that's fine, perfect. So we have this. We're not using any global accelerator, and we're not doing anything else. This is the summary here. We're using this type of load balancer in interfacing. This is the security group. This is the VPC and the subnets we're deploying the instances in. And this is the listener, which is 80, port 80 here, forwarding all the information to, or the traffic to this target group, right? I create the load balancer and the target group, and then I can come back here to here and simply say, okay, let's cross this out. This is done, right? Okay, so we have here our first two elements created. Now the next one is we have to create a CloudFront distribution with an alternate name, right? So we're gonna move to CloudFront now, right? And in CloudFront, we're going to create a distribution. I already have one, which is basically what's happening here with this CNAME, right? Alternative name, right? And I'm gonna create another one. So this is the service that serves the content, static or dynamic content to global users, right? So I'm gonna select this particular, this is the one that I created. This is gonna be the origin. So CloudFront is gonna make a connection with this particular Elastic Load Balancer and stand in front of it, right? So whenever people try to access the application, then we have to use the CloudFront distribution, right? They can still access it through the load balancer if you don't have the security in place. You can restrict the access to only the CloudFront distribution, and no one will be able to use the Elastic Load Balancer as the point of entry, right? So that's going to be our origin. So we don't have to do anything here. We don't have any custom headers. I would say HTTP and HTTPS. That's fine. We're not going to compress any objects. I'm going to say here that we're not using any of this, we're going to say that we are using a legacy caching here, right? And we're going to say that we're going to use caching disable. We don't want to cache anything. And here, this is optional. We're not going to do anything here, right? We don't have any response headers at this time. And the settings, we're going to use every single edge location, just thinking that we might be around the world. So we need to use this from users from all over the world accessing our application. You can use North America and Europe, or North America, Europe, Asia, Middle East, and Africa, right? At the moment, we don't have any WAF ACL, right? And this is the moment when we add a domain name here. But for that, we need to have a certificate. So what we're gonna have is just go to this particular place here and ACM and request a certificate. A certificate is free. You don't have to pay for it, right? Now, when you do a certificate, you're gonna have your fully qualified domain name, right? And then you go ahead and either validate it with DNS validation or email validation. In my case, I selected DNS, which is the one that is recommended by AWS. And then I requested this certificate, right? Of course, this is not going to work because example.com is not a valid domain at this point, right? But as I request the DNS validation, it's gonna provide me, as you can see here, fail. Of course, it's gonna fail, right? So it's gonna provide me with. Let me use a valid domain that I have. Just give me 1 second. Let me use a valid domain. One moment. I want you to see this, right? So that is deleted. I'm going to request one here. I'm going to say, okay, one stop template hub. right? All right, so that's gonna be my domain, right? And then DNS validation. Okay, that's fine. So now requested, that shouldn't fail because that's a valid domain. So what's gonna happen is now that it's going to create some CNAMEs for me so I can validate this with one CNAME for me, depending on what we're doing here, what kind of domain we're having. We may have multiple variants of this domain. Like we can put like the other one, let me show you the other one so you can see it. I can put kind of a star here, right? Which allows me to have something before that dot. You see here, I was able to add this demo SSA-demo domain, right? Or subdomain. So that's the star that I have in the certificate, and that's why this is connection is secure, right? So now I'm gonna go ahead and create a hosted zone. I'm not gonna be able to validate this now at this point, right? But I can go ahead here and click on this. But before I do that, I should create a hosted zone with the same name as the domain. So let me go ahead and create the hosted zone. Let me go to Route 53, right? And in Route 53, I'm gonna create the hosted zone. Right now, I have one, which is the one that I'm using for this particular demo, right? This one here, right? The one that you see here, okay? So I'm gonna create another one. The hosted zone is basically, I would say, a repository of IP addresses, right? And it's comparing a dictionary, right? So I'm gonna create the hosted zone with this particular domain. It's gonna be a public one because it's gonna be accessed from the outside of VPC. If I want to have like a local domain inside of VPC, I can use a private hosted zone here, but that's not the case, right? So I'm gonna create this hosted zone, right? And now what I have to do is basically before I do anything in Certificate Manager, I have to go ahead and use my account when theirs is. And I think I'm gonna do that. Just give me 1 second. I have to go to the registrar. In this case, okay, it's the one that I usually, and not, I'm not selling anything here, and I'm not gonna mention anything about this, right? But that's my preferred registrar, right? To buy domains. So I have this domain here, and as you can see, this is the one that I'm using for this project here, right? So I have this domain right here. So what I have to do is go ahead and manage, and of course it's gonna expire next week. But I have to do something, I have to do some configuration here. So I have some name servers here, as you can see. So what I have to do is go back to the Route 53 hosted zone and copy the name servers so I can validate this domain. So I'm gonna go ahead and copy that here, right? It's a little work that you have to do, but that's the way it is to be able to register that domain or at least validate it with Route 53 and ACM. So let me go ahead and copy the other server. So every time that you create a hosted zone, you're provided with 4 name servers that you have to use for an external registrar when you purchase a domain outside AWS, right? When you purchase the domain with AWS, all of this configuration is done on the fly for you. So you don't have to worry about that, but we're using a third-party company, so we have to do that. So I just make sure that this is saved. And then what I have to do is just go back to, now that I have this, go back to Certificate Manager and create the records in Route 53 to validate that this domain is mine. So I'm gonna create here. You can copy and paste this in Route 53, but there's no need to because there's a button here that does it for you. So I'm gonna create this and then create the record, right? So it's just a matter of time now before that is validated. Let me go back to Route 53 and refresh this. And as you can see, the record has been created for me, right? And it's just a matter of time before it says here, issued, right? Let me just go ahead and do this. As you can see, success. So now I can use this certificate, right? It's issued for me, right? So I can go back to CloudFront now and kind of create the alternate name. So I can say here, okay, I want to do this. Oh, this is not the one, right? So I want to do a one-stop hub, a template hub, right? So I can put it here, right? And then, because I want to add something here before, and then I'm going to use the certificate that I just created. I'm going to refresh this. There you go. It's right here. And that certificate matches this CNAME. Because remember, in the certificate, we said that, well, actually, it doesn't. It doesn't. Okay, so I have a problem here. Let me go ahead and do something. Let me delete this certificate and do it again. It's going to be quick. Okay, so I'm going to delete it. I'm not going to include those two possibilities, right? I'm going to do it again. And I'm going to say here, give me this one, and it give me this one, both, right? So now I can use this without anything in before, and with a subdomain before. Okay, so I'm going to do that. And now that I do that, I can go ahead and validate this again. So I'm going to create the records. And now I have two, because I have two possibilities here. I have two domains. I create the record in Route 53. One moment. So let me go back. And oh, it's already issued. Oh, because the record's are right there. Nice, perfect. So I can go back to CloudFront, and here I can have this one and this one, right? Both as well. They have to match whatever you have in the certificate, right? And now I have this, perfect. Everything is fine, right? And I'm gonna say HTTP here, right? Because remember the listener in the load balancer is 80, so I have to use the same listener here, the same port, right? So now I'm ready to create my CloudFront distribution. The certificate does not exist. Okay. Okay, so let me see what region did I create this in. Certificate. This is in Northern Virginia. Okay, because CloudFront, whenever you create a CloudFront certificate for CloudFront, it has to be in Northern Virginia. Otherwise, it won't work. Let me make sure that that certificate is in Northern Virginia, right? So this is the region. Perfect. I'm gonna say this. Give me this, and give me this again, right? I'm gonna go ahead and go to Route 53 and delete this record, right? Perfect. Go back to certificate manager and request that validation. Refresh here, come here, and just create the records in Route 53, as you can see here. Why is this not working here? I guess it's having some issues here. Okay. It's not creating this for me. Let me go back. Create the record Route 53. Oh, now I created it. Perfect. So now it's just a matter of time before it does this validation. It's just we have to wait a little bit. In the meantime, any questions that you guys may have? Any questions? Success, right? Questions? Okay, that's fine. I'm gonna refresh this again and select the one stop here, and let's see what happens. Oh, it worked now. So we have two alternate domain names here, right? We have one certificate here. The origin is the load balancer, as you can see here. So the load balancer is using HTTP only, and that's why we're doing this. We have all this is perfect. So now we have to wait until it deploys, right? Now, we've done all this. We have the certificate, we have the Route 53 portion here. So we can come and do this, right? We have this now, and we just wait for that. So in the meantime, let me go ahead and go to EC2 and create the launch template, right? So the launch template is
Hey,
going to
Dunia,
be,
sorry
yes,
to
go ahead.
interrupt, but we have a hand raised. It's Alicia.
Okay, go ahead, go ahead. Let me see, who is
Hey,
Alicia? Go ahead.
yeah,
Yeah.
Dunieski, if you wanted to set up the load balancer to listen in port 443, do
Mm-hmm.
you have to upload a certificate, create a certificate, and upload it to the load balancer, or how does it work?
Correct, correct.
Okay,
You have to do as well. Yeah,
got it.
because you are using HTTPS now.
Okay.
Yeah, it
And
forces
can
you,
you
it
use the
forces you to
same
add
one, or
a
you cannot
certificate.
use the same one, or it's not recommended?
Um, it's better to use a different one, right?
Okay,
It's better to use a different one. In the case of the load balancer, your certificate can be in any region, right? But if it is in CloudFront, the certificate has to be created in US East 1. Just bear that in mind, right? If you create a certificate for a CloudFront at some point, just bear that in mind, right?
okay,
Remember
thanks.
that. So we have that here. So let me create the launch template. So in this case, we're gonna create a launch template. Remember, this is the skeleton that autoscaling group uses um, for spinning up instances, right? So now we have this. The version is instances for demo SAA, right? And we're gonna be using the maybe the recently launched here. This AMI, no, that's not the one that we're looking for. Okay, Amazon. Okay, this one is the one that we're using. This one here. The one that is in the free tier, don't forget, right? Free tier, oh, this is not the one. And the quick start, I need to find in the quick start. So this is the one that I'm using. It's gonna be this architecture 64. It could be the other one, but this is the one we're using. Instance type, okay, I'm using T2.micro, perfect. I'm using the key that I have here just in case I want to SSH into the instance. The security group that I'm using is the one that I created. It's an existing one. Is this one, the web server one, which contains port open, port, and well, I cannot use the same because this one has the load balancer security group. So I will have to create another one, right? But in the meantime, I'm gonna use this one just for you guys to have an idea, right? I am using this particular section here to upload something, to run something. So I'm gonna go ahead and um, paste this here, right? So we're gonna be using this particular script. So we're gonna be downloading an HTTP server, right? In this case, Apache, right? We're gonna start the server, we're gonna enable the server, and then we're gonna start using some metadata, right? So if you SSH into the instance and you run this particular URL, you're gonna get the instance ID, right? And we're gonna store that instance ID in this particular variable, right? So basically we're running that command and getting that data, right? Same with the public IPv4, same with the availability zone ID, we're getting the host name, the AMI ID, the Amazon Machine Image ID, and the instance type, right? We're getting all this information so we can display it here, right? For every single instance, right? So this is gonna be for every single instance in the autoscaling group, right? And then we're gonna have this echo, and we're gonna echo all this HTML code, and we're gonna store it in this particular file, which is inside HTML folder, which is inside the www folder, which is inside the var folder, right? So that's gonna be our script to get that information. Pure HTML, pretty easy, and so you understand. But something very important that this is new in EC2 instances is that you have to, in order for you to get the metadata, right? You have to do something here because by default, you don't have permissions to do that. So you have to enable metadata accessible, right? So we have to enable that, and we have to select the version where the token is optional. If you select version 2, which is the default one, right? The problem is that we have to provide a token to be able to pull the metadata from the instance. So we're gonna select the one that is optional, right? And that way, it's gonna help us get that, right? So once that is created, I'm not gonna create the launch template because I already have it, but this is what you do to go ahead and launch that, right? So this is my launch template. So once I have a launch template, what's gonna happen is I will have to create another scaling group with 6 instances, right? And that is going to spin those instances as the desired capacity, right? So let me go ahead and create the auto scaling group. So I'm gonna give it a name, test. I'm not creating one because I already have it, right? So for the launch template, I'm gonna select the launch template that I have. I'm gonna select version 2 because I made a change. It doesn't matter. If you made a change, a modification, you're gonna select the latest version, right? And this is gonna be the launch template name. This is gonna be the instance type, the security group, the key pair, the AMI, right? And it's not spot instances, so we click next. And this is the time when we select the network. I'm gonna use the default one, and I'm gonna select the first 3 A, B, and C. Remember the load balancer had three availability zones. So I want to place 2 instances in each availability zone. That's why I'm selecting 3, right? These are the instance requirements. Nothing to do here. I can override the launch template if I want. So I'm gonna go ahead and attach this to a load balancer. The load balancer remember, is using a target group. So I'm gonna select number 2, which is the one that I created for the second load balancer. I'm not using VPC lattice at this moment, right? The health checks is gonna be done by the load balancer, right? Not by the VPC lattice or something, or the auto scaling group. It's gonna be done by the last load balancer, right? And this is the one recommended by AWS. So 300 seconds is the period delay the first check until your instances finish initializing, right? So it gives it some times for that to finish initializing, and then it starts doing the health checks, right? This is 5 minutes, right? So next, I'm gonna select the desired capacity. It's gonna be 6 instances at all time. Minimum, if there's a scaling policy, is gonna be 2. And if there's a scaling out event, right, you can get up to 8, right? So those are my that's my range here. I'm not gonna use any tracking scaling policy, right? No protection against scaling. I want it to scaling just in case I don't need the instances to save money, right? Next, I'm not gonna have any notification when an instance is terminated or started, or I don't know, whatever happens with the instance, I'm gonna get a notification. I don't need that. And then this is a tag that I can put to every single instance. So I can say name and web server. So every single instance is gonna get these tags, right? I say next, I review everything, and then I hit at the end, create auto scaling group. So I'm not gonna do that because I already have one, right? So now that I have the auto scaling group, I just wait for the instances to be created, right? For me, they're gonna be registered with the load balancer automatically, right? So I can go back to the target group, right? And the target group is, remember, is linked to, I'm not gonna take care of this, just the one that I already created. It's linked to the load balancer. So it's gonna register the instances by default. I don't have to do anything about it. And it's gonna declare they're either healthy or unhealthy. So as we have the health checks with index.html, right? And in the instances that I created, right? I have a user data with this particular file that I created. It's gonna find that file and declare the instance healthy. So now that I have all the connections, everything is done. I did I created the load balancer. I created the target group. I created the CloudFront distribution. I created the certificate. I validated the certificate. I created a record in route. I created a hosted zone in Route 53. I created a record in Route 53, and everything is fine. CloudFront already connected with the load balancer. Then this is the result of my application. So now if I refresh, you will see that this changes, this one too as well, this one too, and this one too. These are the same AMI for all of them, and the same instance type. But you take a look when we refresh the page, how it begins to change, right? Because it's just basically evenly balancing the traffic throughout the three or across the three availability zones, as you can see here, right? So if one instance goes down, the load balancer declares it unhealthy. It notifies auto scaling group. Auto scaling group would terminate that instance and speed up a new one. And then the new one is going to be detected by the target group. The target group is going to register that with the load balancer, and it's going to be up and running, and the traffic is going to be deleted to that. Something to bear in mind: if all the instances are declared unhealthy, the load balancer will still send the traffic to all the unhealthy instances. So that's something that the load balancer has until the auto scaling group terminates the instance and creates the new instance. But in the meantime, if all the instances are unhealthy, the load balancer will continue sending the traffic to those instances, right? So this is the machinery that all of these services can create, right? All put together to have a robust and highly available application as a solutions architect. So that's all for me today. If you have any questions, I think that took those 15 minutes that we spent at the beginning kind of helped me here and finish a little late, but I hope that it was really, really helpful for you guys today.